Chapter 18. About half an hour before sunrise, Sasha woke from a nightmare spun from all the fears she had accumulated since first laying eyes on that map. "Ah!" she yelled, shaking off the images of quicksand, angry mummies, and investors stuffing fistfuls of cash in her dry mouth. "Never a sex stream, damn it," she muttered, sitting up gingerly. The chilly air was harsh on her lungs, forcing a cough as she slipped on heavy wool socks. Working the muscles of her mouth to wake up her jaw, she grabbed the cold cup of coffee on the drafting table. Mopingly, she walked to her desk, pushing aside the piles of notes. Too bad the whiskey was gone, she thought with a smirk. "It made this coffee a little more interesting," Sasha said into her mug as she took a stale, bitter swig. Sitting there, she considered her quickly approaching professional ruin. Annie and PT would be up in a few hours, and the three would be one day closer to disbanding. For all her brilliance, she just couldn't find this last puzzle piece. It infuriated her, igniting a fiery round of damaging self-talk. And all that angst was manifesting as a desire to break everything in sight. Caught up in a sudden rage, she grabbed the map on her desk, tearing it clean in half as she let out a string of curse words. Stacking the halves, she was about to rip them again. But the light from her desk lamp streamed through the thin paper, making her freeze in astonishment. Last night, her tears, now dried on the torn and crinkled map. They had landed on the cheap-ass refill ink used for chart printing, right on top of the sea pools she had passed yesterday. Jutting up from the rock like natural hot tubs, they might have been beautiful once upon a time. But now they were covered with graffiti, littered with beer bottles and cigarette butts. Sasha had written it off as a make-out spot for local teens. But her tears had swirled the greens and blues together, blurring the topographical lines, giving them depth. With a jolt, she was reminded of a colleague's discoveries in South America. Deep in the jungle, his team investigated local Mayan lore, claiming that the cenotes, vast water-filled sinkholes, held sacred artifacts. Many of the cenotes had also developed into long, submerged cave systems. The sinkholes were the beautiful, scary entryways into the Mayan underworld. Swimming through the cenotes, using intermittent air pockets, the Mayans would have ensconced their dead and offerings to the gods. Apparently, the whole thing was big business with the tourists. Her friend and his crew took groups diving as a side hustle. Diving, air pockets, artifacts. No, no, she hissed, resisting the only remaining possibility other than the fruitless sea. No fucking way. Suddenly, she was hopeful again, but she hated blind hope. Rushing to the monitors, she brought up the videos. She ran the animation again, but at quarter speed. For a microsecond, a blip sprang up over the pools. The AI and her team had missed the singular marker designating the pools as the endpoint. They had been so focused on the aggregated signs pointing to the peninsula that any oddball markings had been disregarded. She spun the mouse wheel back and brought up the anomalous, ancient map, reading the notes and symbols anew. Jumping to her feet in shock, Sasha's chair flew away, crashing to a file cabinet. That map was one of a handful they had found before arriving at Gibraltar, making it current events in Neolithic terms. But the notations, in different languages and inks, implied it had been passed from one culture to the next. So a relic of some sort. Below the usual mixture of ancient symbols was the last clue, stated in the language of the Basque people, Euskara. Penned in azure ink, it merely read, "The Adepts of Theroux." However, the most curious detail was that the three pools on the map were painted with the same lapis lazuli pigment. Even the sky and ocean were depicted as pale lime green, as if the mystery scribbler had considered the pools as vital as the map itself. "Don't you dare screw with me right now, ancient dead dudes. Don't you dare," Sasha hissed crazily at the laptop, poking the screen with an angry finger. She glanced at her dive watch, then over at her gear. How stupid was this idea? How dangerous? Not really up on her oceanography, she tried to imagine how the pools even existed. Her first thought was that they must be supplemented by a spring. But to remain a relevant landmark over the generations and included on an ancient map, it had to be a source unaffected by seasons and rainfall. A natural one-way valve was also plausible. A large rock, say, moving back and forth with the tides, trapping water in huge gulps and pumping it up to the pools. She remembered seeing watermarks inside the pools, but realized they would never have dipped low enough to reveal their secrets. A cyclone started up in her stomach at the prospect of imminent fame, or perhaps death if she got trapped in an underwater labyrinth. The hope of a last-minute save, no matter how faint, was like mainlining adrenaline. If she was going to crash and burn, it would be her way, going out swinging. Within minutes, the trailer lights were off, and the only sound was her hiking boots crunching gravel as she lugged her bag towards the sea cliff. On the way, Sasha had a brilliant idea and thanked the coffee gods for a bit of clarity. She would tie off the 50 feet of paracord in her pack and turn it around if she hit the end. This would also help the team find her if Sasha got hung up, depleting her steel 9L tank. Once at the cliffs, she hurriedly put on her spring suit and dive boots. Muscles tensing from the cold breeze, she considered the 3 pools. The old Goldilocks routine, eh? Sasha said, smiling at her solitary goofiness. The first pool had too many signs of life, primarily barnacles, tiny crabs, and starfish. That might indicate the possible scavenging of remains, so not the best candidate for a tribal timeshare. A seabird's crying forced her head to the rising sun and the ghost of the full moon as she cleared her scuba regulator with a blast of cold air. Puckering, she spat inside the face mask, smearing it around for improvised anti-fog. The design was full face and came with a voice-assisted camera and a headlamp. This setup would allow her to narrate the finding while protecting her from toxic air pockets. Pushing a button on the side, a polite, robotic-sounding English lady informed her that power is on. Another push, and the record light began pulsing red. Squinting at the 2 remaining pools, she heard an odd racket coming from the ocean? It sounded like a bleating sheep, but sped up and raised a few octaves. Curiosity winning out over timetables, she walked towards the edge. But before she reached it, one of the local Barbary macaws dashed over the top and scampered past her. It was a juvenile and fast as hell. Chirping and chittering, it ran up to Sasha's staging area and began poking around. Sasha was surprised there were no adults in sight, no angry and protective mother. Sasha chuckled at her cute little visitor while walking back to the pools as she donned her buoyancy control device. Finally, an assistant I can use. Now, I don't want to assume, she said, cinching the last of her straps. But you will work for peanuts, right? 'Cause that's all I got left, kid. The tan and white Magat threw things out of her duffel bag, convinced it held some sort of foodstuffs. Sorry, short stack. No grub in there. Just broken dreams. So, what's your vote? Empty pool number 2 or 3, Sasha joked. Bummed her sarcasm was wasted on an audience of 1. Deeper in her pack now, his blonde butt danced in the air as louder rattles and scrapes prompted her to shoo him off. All right, Destructo, enough already. I gotta get this done before I come to my senses and... Sasha froze, heart in her throat. The only thing she couldn't replace was clutched in the monkey's paws. A locket that held strands of hair from her deceased grandparents. She had taken it off to gear up, thinking it would be safe in the bag. Hey, drop that, you little shit, she shouted, lunging towards him. But her scuba boots skidded to a stop. The monkey had jumped up on the rim of the middle pool, swinging the priceless necklace over the sloshing water with oblivious abandon. Okay, easy. Normally, I don't negotiate with terrorists. But in your case, I will very slowly, carefully, pretend to be taking food from my pocket, yeah? You want food, right? She said in her best singy-songy tone as she pretended to palm something, then hold it out. Giving him a trade at the same time gesture with her left hand, palm up, she inched closer. The little monkey considered all this, his tiny forehead furrowing over something. Backlit by the sun, Sasha's hair shimmered like spun copper, dazzling his curious eyes. A genetic memory was triggered as he subconsciously took in her silhouette, facial features, and outstretched arm. Over 2,000 ancestors ago, another monkey like him sat on this spot and accepted a handful of plant medicine from a mischievous navigator. Destructo smiled and held out the golden necklace. Apparently, he was a wise old soul willing to play ball. Wow, actual monkey business. So, on 3 then? 1, 2, Sasha said, reaching out a nervous hand. Or maybe he was just a wise-ass monkey jerk. He laughed with glee, then pitched Sasha's priceless heirloom into the cloudy, frothy second pool. As she watched in horror, it disappeared with a plink and a miniature geyser of seawater. No, Sasha yelled, diving towards the miscreant. With a screech, he shot past in a flash of raised fur and bared teeth. Launching off the cliff edge, he was gone. Son of a bitch, she bellowed, plunging her arm into the cold water. Searching blindly, Sasha hoped the locket had caught on a rock or something, anything but sucked back out to sea. Her hand came up empty, prompting more cursing towards the sea cliff and that little shit. Fine, fine, have it your way, universe. But if I ever catch that little miniature King Kong bugger, I'm gonna tie his furry little... The dive mask sealed onto her angry, flushed face, cutting off her rant. She tied the paracord securely around a large rock, then to her BDU. Hurriedly yet carefully, Sasha swung her legs over the rough edge of the pool and lowered herself in. Leaving behind the bright sun, along with her modern world, she descended into the murky depths of the ancient reservoir.